The very first thing that struck me about Jim and has been maintained throughout my relationship is his brilliance. He's the most brilliant guy in the building. And he's also so sensitive and kind. He's not the kind of guy who will impose himself on you, but anyone who asks for his help, he's just so open and willing to help you with everything.
Well, I don't know about Jim. I know I was terrified when I first met him. We all know who Jim is. And so what impresses you the most upon meeting him is that how thoughtful he is and how much he wants you to be comfortable. Despite the legal giant that he is, he always works to make us all feel comfortable from the first day of school till the time we graduate and even today.
Anybody who's been into Jim's office knows that it's difficult to find a place to sit, let alone stand. And I had a difficult time finding him. I'd never met him before, and he was sitting, sort of bobbing his head up behind stacks and stacks of papers, and papers that I believe he read every word on every page of that.
I had Jim Ellis as a professor in Introduction to Constitutional Law at UNM, and then I took every course that I could with him when I was in law school, and he's still my teacher. He teaches me how to teach. He comes by my office and says brilliant things that I quickly have to incorporate into my lectures. So that's how I've gotten to know him.
Two of the adjectives that certainly strike me with Jim are thoughtful and understated. When he, for example, we knew as students that he traveled the country for well over a decade to meet with every state legislator he could on the issue of whether or not he could convince state legislatures to pass laws banning the execution of people with mental retardation. And we knew that that had happened with Jim, but he won't tell you that he's the one who instituted that change well over a decade. But he would, from time to time, tell us under his breath, well, I do have a lot of frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, what's important to Jim is doing it the right way. And that's how he has affected this bar, which is teaching students either in the classroom or in the Supreme Court cases that he's brought students into the briefing on, that there's so much more going on here than meets the eye, right? That you have to dig into these issues. You have to marshal the facts and the analysis to persuade the judges to go your way. And you leave the law school knowing, I got to do that down on 4th and Lomas, I got to do that in Denver, I got to do that in the Supreme Court if I end up at the Supreme Court.
Jim had a brief. We would put together a team of 10 to 15 students and orchestrate research for well over a month. And he would keep us involved at every level of the project. And that's certainly not something he needed to do, and it was work for him to do. And got to give him credit, because he would walk into a room with 15 type A, eager beaver, overachievers, and have to address us and help us process what it is that he's trying to do. He would help choreograph this great symphony of research on many different levels, and that was such an educational experience that we carry into our practices today.
What I can tell you about his performance at oral argument is, first, he's never listened to the recording of his oral argument at the Supreme Court, but I have, and it's amazing. I mean, within seconds, he's going toe-to-toe with Chief Justice Rehnquist, with Justice Scalia, answering questions by Justice O'Connor, and he's amazing. They're engaged. They're engaged because this is somebody who knows what he's talking about. They can ask him, so how do states define mental retardation? How many states, which states are actually passing legislation while they have individuals incarcerated? He knows it all. I mean, that's something that I think we've hinted around, which is Jim Ellis knows everything. I mean, everything. And that's another reason why his students worship him. He really does. I mean, I've listened to the tapes. The guy knows everything.
I remember when the issue was who was going to do the oral argument in the first case in Atkins. And Tony Amsterdam at NYU, who was really the leader of the band, said, Jim's going to do it. And it's an area that Jim has been involved in since the get-go, working with ALI, working with the ABA and standards. And so he could teach the members of the court on subjects which not technically the law, but were so critical to the resolution of the legal issues. And that's why it was a brilliant choice.
The Atkins opinion talks about a dramatic shift in state legislative change that had occurred over the course of 13 years between an earlier opinion called Penry and the Atkins opinion. And what's notable is that Jim is that change. Jim's the reason that happened. Mm-hmm. He knew after Penry that that's what he needed to do. So he would get on a plane and go across country to any state where a state legislator was willing to listen to him speak.
So Jim has inspired me to be not only a civil rights lawyer, but to be a good civil rights lawyer, to do it right. And now he's inspired me not only to be a teacher, but to be a better teacher, to be a really good teacher. And every day, I mean, this year, teaching his version of Con Rights, it's at a level following his map that is just remarkable. I mean, he's made it a litigator's course. He's taught students how to really dig in depth, and using that format has made me a better teacher. So he continues to inspire on all levels, as an advocate, as a teacher, as just a good human being.
I don't think students understood that this man, because he was the God among men, that he truly loved and cared for them the moment he met them, even before he met them. And he wanted to do everything he could to make them feel comfortable and welcome, and to not only participate in class, but to engage with him in it. And he has never thought for one second that he didn't have as much to learn from us as he had to give to us.
It highlights his approachability. I don't think the students are, even though they are overwhelmed by the quality of his thinking and his ability to stretch them, I think they're very comfortable with him. And he's so inviting to them as well.
The thing that that you always take away from learning from Jim Ellis is his sense of humor. I've had the good fortune of listening to his lectures in order to prepare for Con Rights this semester. And they ought to bundle them and sell them as part of a fundraiser, even though sometimes you don't get the jokes for another week or two. I mean, it's amazing. He even made Justice Scalia laugh in his oral argument in Atkins versus Virginia.
He's one of the most approachable people I've ever met, but you certainly don't feel that way as a student going up to him. But yeah, his sense of humor has been a thread for all of us to put us all at ease at every step of the way.
I mean, one of the amazing things about his sense of humor is the things that he will throw off in class that you might not catch initially. So I'm listening to these recordings, and this one student says, you know, the more and more I read this case, the more and more I'm really in love with it. And Jim says on the fly, yeah, it's called the Stockholm Syndrome.
But I knew that students kept coming in with materials that were not helpful to Jim. So I created a box that I marked not helpful. And one day I come down into this office in the basement of the library, and Jim is pretty much sitting in the not helpful box because he's decided he has some sort of writer's block, and so he's just going to sit in this penalty box for a while.
You can be talking to Jim about almost any topic, and his responses are always full of allusions. You have no idea what he's talking about. Allusions to history, to science, to pop culture. And I can't tell you how many of my colleagues say, you know, I'm a little sensitive about saying any, I don't understand. And I've always said, I tell him that all the time. Jim, stop. You got to give me a little background. What the hell does that mean? And he's very kind about that too.
The students worship Jim Ellis. So I had clinic this past summer, and one day I'm sitting at my clinic desk and I hear Jim's voice coming out of one of the computers, and I look over and the students are all around a computer watching a video from 1989 where Jim was speaking at a news conference after the Penry case. And the students are just so engaged. He makes the material fun. He makes the material important because he brings a litigator's approach to it. His advanced 2-semester con rights course enlivens the material because it's not just about academics in a vacuum. It is about how the litigators in those cases persuaded justices to rule their way. And he's able to do that because he has experience at that.
I was surprised when you reached out to have me say some words about Jim, simply because there are so many of us who would jump at the opportunity to say nothing but kind words about Jim. He truly did. He has inspired my career. He has meant the world to me. I have thought of him on just about every single brief I've ever written, because he has been a true role model of not just as a legal scholar, but as a human being.
Honestly, can't believe that I get to speak for him. I mean, this is a guy who I've admired for 16, 17 years, and every time he walks by my office to say something brilliant, I'm still stunned that I'm actually working with him. I'm actually not. I'm actually learning from him and then passing it along. But it's really a privilege just to get to talk about it.
I was so honored to be asked to speak for Jim, this man who has meant an extraordinary amount to my life, to my practice, to my kids. He is a miraculous person. And the fact that we, 2 of his schmuck students, get to speak for him, it's an incredible honor, and we love Jim. We love him with all our heart.
It is an honor for both of us to be here to talk about Jim, because it's been such an honor to know him and to work with him.
We are so glad that Jim is getting this award. There are few people on this planet that we think more of than Jim. Probably no one, as a matter of fact. We have been proud to be his students. We are honored to have worked for him, and we could not be prouder to see him get this award tonight, and there's no one who deserves it more.